My name is Ethan Cross, and Halloween was always my favorite holiday. When I was 10, it felt like the most magical and the most important day of the year. The weeks leading up to it were all about planning my costume. But what I loved most was decorating the house. My dad shared the same excitement. He'd buy everything: fake cobwebs, giant plastic spiders, skeletons to hang from the trees, even a fog machine that hissed like something from a graveyard. That particular year, my two best friends, James and Curtis, came to help us decorate. James was 14, the cool older kid who could reach the high branches. Curtis was 12, just a little older than me. We wanted our house to look like the scariest one on the block. Dad was setting up a creepy scarecrow by the porch, while Curtis and I stretched cobwebs over the bushes. James climbed a small ladder to hang a plastic ghost from the huge oak tree near the sidewalk. That's when I first noticed him, the man. A man I'd never seen before was walking down the street, but then he just stopped in front of our house. He wasn't walking a dog. He wasn't out for a jog. He just stood there watching us. He looked ordinary, average build, maybe late 30s, wearing a plain jacket and jeans. But his smile wasn't right. It was wide, too wide, and somehow not friendly. "Wow, you kids are doing a great job, getting ready for the big night." Ethan cheerfully, because I was a friendly kid. "Yeah, we're trying to be the spookiest house." The man, grinning wider, scanning our decorations. "I bet you'll get a lot of candy tonight. You planning on going trick-or-treating around here? What's your route?" That question made me pause. Felt wrong. But before I could answer, Dad walked over. Dad placed a protective hand on my shoulder, stepping between us and the man. Dad firmly, calm but serious. "Can I help you?" For a moment, the stranger's grin faltered. The man, still smiling but thinner now. "Just admiring your decorations. Your boy here is a hard worker." He glanced at me again, his eyes dark and unreadable. The man, "Make sure you get lots of full-size candy bars, kid." Dad, to me, without looking away from the man. "Time to go inside, son." I obeyed. But as I turned toward the door, I glanced back. The man's fake smile had vanished. His eyes were cold, angry. He stared at my father for a long second before turning and walking away down the street without a word. 2 nights later, I woke up to a loud thud from the yard. Something heavy had fallen. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor, the window overlooking the street and that big oak tree. Curiosity won over fear. I crept out of bed and peeked through the blinds. The streetlights cast long shadows across the yard. And there, standing in the middle of our yard, beneath the oak tree, was the man. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at the house, staring at the windows. I swear he was looking straight at mine. My heart thundered. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my blanket, then bolted out of the room and down the stairs. Dad was in the living room watching TV. Ethan panicked. "Dad, that man, he's in our yard." Dad's face changed immediately. He got up fast, opened the front door, stepped outside into the chilly night air. I stayed in the doorway, my heart pounding as I watched him scan the yard. A minute later, Dad came back inside and locked the door. Dad, forcing a casual tone, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "There's no one out there. The scarecrow must have fallen, probably the wind." But I knew it wasn't the wind. October 31st arrived. I was still shaken, but the thrill of trick-or-treating pushed the fear aside. James, Curtis, and I got into our costumes. I was a ninja, James a werewolf, Curtis a vampire. As soon as dusk settled, we grabbed our candy bags and set off. We wandered far from home, certain the farther houses gave the best candy. After several blocks, our bags were heavy and our laughter loud. That's when we approached a dark house with only a single pumpkin glowing on the porch. "Hey kids, over here. I've got the good stuff." We turned. The man was standing in the driveway of a house with no lights on, holding a big bowl. His wide grin stretched across his face again as he took a step toward us. The man, "Come on, don't be shy." Curtis and I instinctively stepped forward. After all, who refuses more candy? But James grabbed us both. "No, don't. We need to go." The man's grin vanished again. His face hardened. He dropped the bowl, it was empty, and started walking toward us much faster now. Run! We didn't need to be told twice. We bolted. I heard his heavy footsteps pounding the pavement behind us, closing in. Curtis darted between two houses, disappearing into a dark backyard. James was ahead of me, but the man was coming for me. I could hear his harsh breathing, feel his fingers almost grazing the back of my costume. Dad, furious, desperate. Get away from my son. Dad came running from a side street. He had been out looking for us. The man's hand instantly let go of me, so fast I stumbled to the ground. He stared at Dad for a moment, then turned and sprinted into the darkness, swallowed by the night. Dad helped me up, holding me so tightly it almost hurt. James reappeared, and Curtis crept out from behind a fence, both of them shaken and crying. On the way home, Dad explained he had grown worried when we didn't return on time. He called James's house, then drove out to search for us. A neighbor had seen 3 kids in costumes heading toward that part of town. That clue probably saved me. We never saw that man again, but I'll never forget the look on his face. That grin that hid something darker. That Halloween was supposed to be fun. Instead, it left a scar in my memory. Even now, when I see a wide smile on a stranger's face, I remember the man under the oak tree and the way he almost took me away. It was late October when my friend Ryan Hale invited me to his uncle's old pumpkin farm on the edge of Black Hollow. The place had always been known for its giant carved pumpkins, haunted hayrides, and corn maze, the kind that brought families from all over the county. That year, the farm had been quiet. Ryan's uncle, Mr. Hale Sr., was struggling to keep it running after his wife's passing. Ryan wanted to cheer him up by throwing a Halloween weekend bonfire party for some friends. I agreed to help, though I had no idea that night would turn into something I'll never forget. We reached the farm at dusk. The sun was sinking behind the rolling hills, casting long shadows over the sprawling pumpkin fields. The barn loomed dark against the fading orange sky. Its weathered wooden planks creaked in the chilly wind, almost like the building was breathing. Ryan's uncle greeted us warmly but seemed distracted, his eyes often darting toward the old silo near the edge of the property. Mr. Hale, stay close to the barn tonight. Stray too far and you'll get lost in the fields. Or worse, you'll meet the coyotes. He gave a small, uneasy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. By nightfall, our friends started arriving. Samantha, Kyle, Jenna, and Marcus, bringing snacks, drinks, and a Bluetooth speaker blasting classic rock. The bonfire roared to life, crackling sparks into the dark sky. We roasted marshmallows, laughed, and told ghost stories. The fields around us stretched into blackness, the carved pumpkins glowing faintly like watchful eyes. For a while, everything felt perfect. But then came the first strange noise, a rustling from the rows of pumpkins. We figured it was just the wind, or maybe a raccoon. We were wrong. Around 11 p.m., as Kyle was reaching for another marshmallow, we heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate, crunching across the dry soil. Ryan stood up, holding a flashlight. Ryan calling out, "Uncle? That you?" No answer. The footsteps stopped, then shifted closer, slower. The beam of Ryan's flashlight caught something. A figure standing just beyond the bonfire's glow, dressed in dark clothes with a hood pulled low. Another figure appeared beside him, then a third. Samantha. Ryan. Tell me that's your uncle's friends. Ryan shook his head. No. Stay behind me. The hooded men stepped forward, their faces hidden in shadow. The tallest one spoke, his voice rough and cold. Tall man. Hand over your phones, wallets, everything. Now. We froze. There was a long silence, only the crackle of the bonfire filling the air. Marcus, there's no need for this. We'll just leave. The tall man raised a hunting knife, the firelight glinting off the blade. Tall man. I said now. Terrified, we obeyed. One by one, we tossed our phones and wallets into the dirt. Jenna was shaking so badly she could barely unclasp her purse. While the men gathered our things, I noticed movement deeper in the pumpkin rows. A shadow, something hunched, darted between the glowing orange lanterns. At first I thought it was another robber, but then it crawled, low to the ground, too fast, too jerky to be human. I blinked, and it vanished behind the pumpkins. Suddenly, one of the men, the shortest of the three, let out a blood-curdling scream. We all turned. Something had grabbed his leg from the darkness and yanked him backward into the rows. His flashlight tumbled to the ground, spinning wildly before dying out. The tall man cursed and rushed to help his partner, disappearing into the blackness. The third man stayed frozen, knife raised, his breathing ragged. Ryan's uncle burst out of the barn, shotgun in hand. "Mr. Hale, get away from my land." The last hooded man bolted into the fields as Mr. Hale fired a warning shot into the air. The shot echoed across the empty farmland, followed by a strange silence, broken only by the distant sound of the first robber's screams, growing weaker until they stopped altogether. We didn't sleep that night. The police arrived within an hour, but they found no sign of the intruders, except for the knife, lying near a smashed pumpkin. No footprints led away from the spot where the first man had been dragged. Ryan's uncle was pale when he spoke to the sheriff. "Mr. Hale, they should have never gone into the fields. That land's not what it used to be." When asked what he meant, he just shook his head and refused to say more. As dawn approached and the officers prepared to leave, I swore I heard whispers coming from the dark rows of pumpkins. Not the wind, not animals. A soft, low voice repeating a word I couldn't understand. It sent chills down my spine. The farm closed down the following spring. Ryan's uncle sold the property and moved away, saying he couldn't tend to the land anymore. But I still think about that night, about the men who tried to rob us and the one who never came back out. I wonder what took him, and I wonder if it's still there, lurking under the soil, waiting for the next fool who wanders too deep into the pumpkin fields of Black Hollow. It was past midnight when I left the Cedar Mill Diner after a late shift. The rain had been falling for hours, soaking the narrow highway that cut through the woods. Most people avoided that route after dark, especially Hollow Bridge, an old stone bridge that sagged over a sluggish black river. Local legends called it the Chain Woman's Crossing. I had never believed the stories until that night. The wipers squealed against the glass as I drove my rusted pickup truck through the curtain of rain. When I reached the bridge, the streetlight at the far end flickered, then went out completely. That's when I saw her. A lone figure standing in the middle of the bridge. She was tall and thin, wearing what looked like a tattered gray dress that clung to her in the rain. I slowed down, thinking she might need help. As I got closer, my headlights revealed more. Her skin looked pale, almost bluish, and her long black hair was plastered across her face. At first, I thought she was holding something, but then I realized it was a chain. A heavy, rusted chain looped around her wrists, the links trailing down to the wet pavement. I rolled down my window slightly, Ethan calling out cautiously, "Mom? Are you okay? Do you need a ride?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly raised her head, her hair falling away to reveal sunken eyes that gleamed in the headlights like wet glass. A crooked smile crept across her lips. That smile made my stomach twist. Something deep inside screamed at me to keep driving. I reached for the gear shift, but then she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet it carried over the sound of the rain. "The woman. Help me. Take off the chain." The words sent a chill racing down my spine. "Ethan, stay back. Stay away." She didn't stop. She moved faster than any person should have been able to, the chain clattering across the wet pavement as she dragged it closer. I hit the gas, speeding backward until I reached the end of the bridge. As I turned the truck around to flee, I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was standing there again, back in the middle of the bridge as if she'd never moved. The chain hung slack in her hands. Rain dripped from her hair, and even from that distance, I could see her smile. I drove straight home, heart pounding the entire way. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd convinced myself it had to be exhaustion or a trick of the storm. But when I stepped out of the truck, I saw the long, jagged scratch on the hood, a mark too real to deny. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the sound of chains dragging across pavement, faint but unmistakable. Around 3 a.m., my porch light flickered. When I peeked through the blinds, the street outside was empty, except for wet footprints leading up to my door. The next day, I went to the Cedar Mill Library to look up local history. The librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Wren, hesitated when I asked about Hollow Bridge. Mrs. Wren, lowering her voice, "Some say she was a woman chained by her husband, drowned right under that bridge 100 years ago. Others say she was a prisoner who escaped and cursed the land before she died. But every story agrees on one thing. If you stop for her, she won't let you go." Her words made my skin crawl. A week later, I had to drive the same route again. I told myself it was just superstition. But as I neared Hollow Bridge, I slowed down, gripping the wheel tighter. The rain started falling again, soft at first, then harder, just like that night. And then I saw her, standing in the exact same spot. Only this time, she was holding the chain higher, the end dangling like a lure. I didn't stop. I pressed the gas and kept my eyes on the road ahead. But as I passed her, I swear I heard her voice, soft, right next to my ear in the cab of my truck. "The woman, help me, take off the chain." I didn't look back. I didn't dare. Since that night, I've avoided that bridge at all costs. But sometimes, especially when it rains, I hear the sound of chains scraping along the road behind my truck, even when no one's there. I've moved towns since then, but part of me knows it doesn't matter. Some things don't stay behind. Some things follow.